I'm only proposing to briefly summarise my personal thoughts, not necessarily to suggest this is what Andre will report back later, but just a few thoughts from the moderator. I've found 5 or 6 themes of interest to me and that keep recurring. They're very broad, and they're all largely rooted in a need for greater dialogue. The first, for me, has been this constant use of the word horizontal by everybody, and the need to ensure that cultural and creative issues aren't placed in a single ghetto or a single department, that they are read across policy and that they're understood to be actually part of what makes it worth living, what makes life worth living. Just to warn that I'm sure we're all going to face risks as well as opportunities from that line of thinking. The risk is that maybe the very clear, rather thoughtful and specialist dialogues we're used to with culture ministries and the language we use may not work necessarily in some other contexts, and that we might become successful and culture be seen as horizontal. There's a parallel in my industry from the arrival and the uptake of digital and interactive technologies, and in fact just good old-fashioned computers. Once upon a time, the people who were in charge of computers were specialists, and they might have been in the accounts department of a company, but they would be the people saying, we must use more computers in our company. And if you roll back now and you think 25 years ago, that was quite a radical idea. And now most of you will have a computer on your desk and probably a rather powerful one in your mobile phone. When you're successful in becoming horizontal, as those original proponents of the computer have now been, you have to let go. You have to accept that you've done something, you've achieved it, and you need to move on. Second theme for me has been about definitions, common definitions, shared understanding of the vocabulary, and that leads me into assessment, methodologies for understanding, evaluation, and impact. I think it's about the value that we get as citizens and as consumers. I think that's what we're trying to find. But if there was more data and there were more shared definitions, I think some of the dialogues we have would be easier. But I don't think we should just accept hard data econometrics, as they call it, as our ruling principle. We need to also include what economists would call softer measures of impact and evaluation. A third very overarching theme that I've been hearing a lot is I was wondering whether we would see oppositional statements about how no, culture is different from the world of commerce, and clearly there are differences and there are similarities, but we seem to have avoided very extreme positions which say, which I think you would have had in a forum like this maybe 10 years ago. So I think we are ourselves part of a changing relationship between art, design, creativity and society, which we should reflect back to the Commission and to our national governments. I'm not sure they are often part of that dialogue. A case in point would be that in the case of the incredible challenges faced by television across Europe, most politicians only think about television when they're going to be on it, not about what it's like as a viewer or as a creator. And we have a job to do to bring the politicians amongst us, some of them, into line with the way that the changing relationship of the wider society is moving. The fourth component of this for me stems from that changing relationship. It's to do with if there is a changed relationship between art, culture and the wider society, how do we ensure that our public engagement there keeps up? We had an interesting conversation about research and development, which is of interest probably to a few of us, but is, I think, a symbol of a lack of keeping up, a lack of understanding that the nature of creativity and culture is changing, and that therefore the old systems may not work. The old idea of subsidy, and the very fact that many arts organisations think of themselves as subsidised. I was being told by a colleague yesterday evening that a mutual friend of ours who runs one of London's major theatres says that he receives subsidy for putting plays and dance on a stage, but actually what his organisation does is a combination of performance events that they create, education, and they're a tourist attraction as well. And only one part of that is really reflected in his engagement with the public sector. And maybe that's another aspect of how things are changing, that the head of a major theatre can think like that. He doesn't see his primary and only job as to be getting things on the stage. And I think there are wider questions about our public architecture and how that might need to change, our public service broadcasters, what we expect of our museums. Are museums only places which are about curating and storing and researching? Or, as a contributor said earlier, are they only places about entertainment? I would say they're both, and hopefully both in equal measure, so when that works, when that's appropriate. My fifth theme is all about dialogue, as the final contribution made clear. I'd like to suggest there should never be another cultural forum. I would like to suggest that the next one would have both the economists and the artists present. And that without getting to that position, we won't have really learned any of the lessons. We'll still be talking about the need for greater dialogue. We're talking about ideas, we're talking about experiences, we're talking about the quality of our life, and these are horizontal issues. The longer we pretend there is a cultural worldview, and that it's special and that we don't want these people here, the more we undermine our argument. So I'd like to say this should be the first and possibly the last of these events, if we can't ensure that next time there's representation from creators and artists, and also from the economic ministries. Somebody told me in my ear that the various directorates general of the Commission were invited to attend and decided it was about culture, by and large, and so sent a few people but really didn't take it that seriously. I'd like to ensure that the President of the Commission is told that tomorrow and asked why that's acceptable, because I don't think it is. And the final point for me is how we focus this on a particular activity. It's a very good talking about this, but if we don't focus on something specifically, then we won't have any real rallying point to cause change. I'd like to draw back to my original opening contribution about the 2009 year of culture and innovation. That seems to me, if it's approved by the Commission, which I believe it's about to be a really fascinating and important opportunity to rally some of these debates. If the 2009 year goes ahead as only about culture without taking in these horizontal issues, I think we'll have missed a major opportunity, and that would be a great shame. But most of all, I'd like to close by thanking you for lots and lots of contributions, lots of very considered contributions. I didn't feel that we were in danger of running out of energy at any point, even though this is possibly the worst possible format to use for this kind of debate. A large room with two blokes sitting at the front. I've never felt as separate from a group of people I was having a conversation with in my whole life. So that's the other thing I'd like to change. Let's not do it in an enormous room next time. Let's do it in a room where I can see people's eyes. That would really help. But I'd love to thank you for your contributions. Keep talking to each other, keep talking to both myself and Andre as we go into lunch. And thanks again.